welcome everyone. And Eric Kaye from Holmes Cay, or apparently it's Holmes Cay. I don't know. Your English is not my first language, so that's my excuse. Um, I've figured maybe we can start just with a little bit of history about yourself, and then that will just roll into Holmes Cay. Because I find it kind of fascinating that you have what seems like a very successful career in music, and now you are also having a rum brand. So I just want to know, how did that all happen?
Sure. Well, I was born at a very early age. No. So I spent most of the last 25 years or so writing music for film, television shows, jingles, hundreds and hundreds of jingles, and had a lot of fun doing that for a very long time. And that kind of industry disappeared. There's still being music made for TV and film and everything, but the way it used to be, where you would sit in a room, you would write some music, and then you would call the New York City session musicians to come in and play it, which would be the Rolling Stones horn section or Steely Dan's band or David Letterman's band, all these amazing musicians, and they'd come in and play, and then you'd have the background singers come and sing it, and it would be like an amazing thing. And that world disappeared a few years ago with, everybody being able to have a recording studio on a laptop. And the whole studio scene disappeared, and the whole paying good money for original music disappeared, and royalties and residuals, and that whole world of, the New York and LA studio musician scene and composing scene really fragmented into, used to be, there was a couple of hundred guys in New York all making a good living. And if you could be one of those 200, you'd make a couple of $100,000 and great. And if you apprenticed in through the system, you could be there. Now there's probably 3,000 or 4,000 guys doing it, and everybody's making $25,000 or $30,000 because there's no barriers to entry. So I kind of saw the writing on the wall, and I was trying to think of what else I could do that I was as passionate about as music. Because, for most of those 25 years, I would live, sleep, write music all day long and play it. And when I wasn't, I would be off scuba diving in the Caribbean or, the Pacific or somewhere. And I didn't want to open a scuba shop, and I didn't want to open a travel company, and I love rum. And what really made me pivot, there were two sort of things. First was an article on Matt Petrick's blog about independent bottlers. And, we don't have them in America. We had them in Europe, and I would see them, but I didn't realize how really predominant it was a thing in Europe, the whole world of the independent bottlers. I like whiskey. I've never been a hardcore whiskey drinker, so that wasn't really my world to get deep into. And then what really did it was that combined with Richard Seal coming out with Destino that was not coming out in America. And it was one of the best rums. Richard Blesgraff sent me a sample. I'm like, this is why, I'm sick and tired of not being able to get the rums I want in America. There's all these great ones in the Caribbean that don't get imported. There's all these European independent bottlers and Veliers and Samarolis, and they just weren't coming here. I'm like, how hard could it be? Matt Petrick wrote about it, and me having zero spirits industry experience whatsoever, had no idea. Yeah, it's really friggin' hard to do, especially in the United States. We have still a ton of prohibition era laws and restrictions. We have the 3-tier system, which means I can't sell a bottle to you. I can't even sell a bottle to Richard Blesgraff if he had a store. I have to sell it to a distributor, and each state has its own distributor. The distributor has to sell it to a retailer. The retailer has to sell it to you. It's an incredibly bureaucratic system. You need to register your product in every state you sell on. You need a state import permit. You need a federal import permit. You need a marketing permit. Me not having any idea, thought, yeah, I'll buy a couple of barrels and see how it goes. And by the time I realized, how much it was going to cost just to keep going, I'm like, I need to be able to sell a little more than 2 barrels. So hopefully they will sell. And my first order was 4 barrels of Foursquare rum from the main rum company in the UK. And I had met Richard Seal a month or two before in New York. And I said, this is what I'd like to do. I'm planning on it. And he was immediately about to tell me, yeah, I don't do barrel picks. And, because, I know that. And before he could even get there, I'm like, yeah, I've already been in touch with Main Rum. And he's like, oh, okay. Yep. They're the ones you want to deal with. You have my blessing. And it was great. So, I still didn't know if he was taking me seriously, because he says, 20 people a week come to Richard Seal saying, can I buy rum from you? And which is why he only, he steers people to either Karsten in the Netherlands or the Main Rum in Liverpool, which is the same company. So, I can't sell to everybody he wants. This is, if you want to buy, go to Karsten, go to Main Rum, and you have my blessing. And he's been tremendously supportive of independent bottlers in general. He's definitely a firm believer of the rising tide lifts all boats. And the more we can get out there spreading the gospel of good and true rum, I think it's better for everyone. I don't know what would happen if I said, I want to put out some Foursquare rum and add a whole bunch of vanilla and glycerol and make it taste really smooth. And I'm going to put a big Dourly's Parrot on it. No, so anyway, back to the story. I got 2 barrels of 2005 and 2 barrels of 2009 originally, because I figured that was the safest bet. At worst case scenario, I'd lose a bunch of money and have rum to last me the rest of my life. But luckily, the 2005 sold out pretty quickly, which let me know that, hey, there are other people like me that kind of want this cask strength aged rums. And to that point, Foursquare hadn't put out a plus 60% rum in the United States. They had in the UK or Europe, but never. And, since then, they've done that several releases. So I think we were kind of the first to do that, which was nice, and it helped it sell. And then the 09s, we immediately dumped into port casks in New York when we got there, and waited a full year and released them September of last year. I know that's your least favorite of our rums, Ivar, but it was an experiment. That one, I really wanted to see if I could recreate the Foursquare port cask edition, which is the unicorn, which is now $800 a bottle and crazy. And I completely failed miserably at that. What we came out with is absolutely nothing like the Foursquare port cask. But thank you, Kim. I think it's its own thing, and I like it. I enjoy it. It's sold out. Sadly, I have none left, but there's more on the way. We've got 5 more barrels aging right now. So come September, October, we should have new port casks, and nice. It's going to be younger, so it'll be less expensive as well.
Well, luckily, it's not all about me, right? So
it's mostly about you, Ivar. You're like the Robert Parker of rum. I'm going to start crafting my rums just so you can get the good Ivar rating on it.
No.
People do with wine. So anyway,
you picked Foursquare. Why? Was it because just general popularity?
One is because it was the best of all the samples I tasted. 2, because I had a feeling it would be. 3, I think Richard is making some of the best rum or spirits in the whole world of any spirit. He's a master distiller, blender. Everybody here knows that. And just the fact by at that time there was 2,000 people on the Foursquare fan club on Facebook, I figure relatively safe bet I should be able to sell 300 or 400 bottles of it.
Makes sense.
The Guyana fan club at that point had 500 people on it, and the Jamaica, had a couple of hundred people, and plus I just loved that 2005 rum. It was just awesome.
Yeah, that was excellent, absolutely excellent. So you're sourcing, you already mentioned it, Share in Amsterdam and Main Rum in Liverpool. How has that been for you? For you, this was all new and exciting, I guess. But has that been the easier part? You talked about how difficult it is to sell it in the United States.
No, it's been a nightmare, especially since we've moved on to sourcing beyond those as well. We're sourcing rum from currently like 5 or 6 different places. Um, One of the things that happened, I should probably open the chat, see if I'm missing any questions. No, is, the first time I went over to Rum Fest in England, where I met you, Imar, and I started approaching the distillery saying, hey, can I release one? Can I put out a rum of yours? Kind of hat in hand. And the first company that said yes really was the Travelers Distillery in Belize, who I met in London, then flew down to Belize, and that's been a wonderful working relationship. How we bottle down there. It's really 100% produced in Belize product, and we ship the bottles up after bottling. But what's happened, it's a great excuse to go to Belize, is now that we're sort of getting a little bit of attention, distilleries are reaching out to us saying, hey, would you like to put out one of our rums, which is humbling and blows my mind. So I think we're on the right track for now.
Like who? Can you reveal anybody who's been?
I can reveal because Luca just posted his yesterday, or somebody did, but we have some Mhoba on the way. It's currently sitting in the docks in New York waiting for customs clearance. Another thing that the Europeans don't have to worry about are the Moba is being held up because the FDA registration for Mhoba expired. So they're not letting the rum into the country right now. So they've got to reapply for an FDA foreign producer registration number to make sure that their goods are not poisonous or something. So hopefully by the time this airs, the Moba rum will have cleared. We have 4 barrels coming in. 4-year-old, aged in South African whiskey casks, Baines whiskey. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but it's amazing, amazing rum. I'm really excited about it. And yeah, they reached out to us saying, hey, we're gonna start to let some independent bottlers. We want to give some to Valier for Europe, and we'd love to see if you wanted to do the U.S. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. It's a fantastic rum. Those of you that don't know Mhoba, it's a single estate South African rum. They grow their own cane on the estate. They press the fresh cane juice into a little pot still. And then they have some amazing funky fermentation. So you get some real high ester, amazing stuff. They also do some releases with staff aging, where they'll take South African barbecue wood and staff age it with that. The bushfire, which we didn't release, but it's like a barbecue and a rum together. It's really awesome stuff. So excited about Moba.
That is one of the most exciting distilleries, I think, in the world. Really,
yeah.
You see how they do things. I mean, he built his own pot stills. He builds everything himself, and the rum that comes out is pretty unique. Right, I mean, it's kind of a marriage of Martinique and Jamaica, right?
Yeah.
It's beautiful stuff, and for them, I mean, in a way, this is a win-win situation for them too, right? Because for them to get into the U.S. market is really tough, and to go this route, I think it's very smart for you and for them.
I think so, especially at their small volume. I mean, they don't really produce they don't have hundreds of barrels in a warehouse, let alone the thousands that, some of the Jamaican companies have. But they're really a small operation. So, I don't think they could supply 100 barrels to somebody right now. Hopefully they'll get there. But yeah, I'm really excited. Robert is an amazing distiller.
Yeah, and an amazing guy to deal with.
Yeah. So, yeah, we still work with the Netherlands and the UK, but now we're dealing with distilleries directly in Belize, in Jamaica, in Mauritius, in South Africa. We've got a bunch of fun rums coming up in the next 12 months.
That sounds good to me. So is that, when you deal with the distillery directly, is that easier to do? Is it cheaper to do? What's the benefit of that?
Definitely not cheaper. The benefit is you can get 100% tropically aged rum if it's a tropical rum. And the other reason I really like to do it is, you have to kind of look at the whole history of rum and exploitation and, the white guy going down and making all this money. I would like to keep as much of the value and revenue as possible in the countries that make it. So whenever I can bottle it there and use local people to make it there and keep as much of that value in the country, no knock against the people in Europe that are making it much more accessible. But given the option, it is more expensive, but to me, I think it's a more authentic product. So given the choice, I would love to bottle everything at source. It's not always possible.
Makes sense. Yeah, makes sense. And share is fantastic for when you're starting up, right?
Yeah.
When you don't have the connections.
And when you do have the connections, they're fantastic as well. Major brands still use them, especially for their bulk, their blends.
Mm-hmm.
They can reliably, and the shipping is relatively easy all over the world from the Netherlands. And they can supply these 5,000 liter totes or bigger.
Yeah.
And they've been doing it for 300 years.
Yeah. And the fact that they can guarantee blends forever. I mean,
Well, I wish.
That's incredible, right? The bigger brands that deal with them, they need some sort of continuity in the product. Yeah, I think they're one of the very few, if not the only one, that can do that.
They're definitely the largest, that's for sure.
Yeah. Good question by Jim. How does the sampling process go? I mean, Joshua last week was saying, his table is always full of samples of distilleries sending him samples and stuff. Is that kind of how it goes now too?
Yeah, I find the best time to taste is usually, right around breakfast time, around 8 or 9 a.m. My palate's fresh. I'll wake up, drop the kids off at school, and taste rum. But yeah, the sampling process. So, for Belize, I flew down to Belize and walked around the warehouse and said, let's try that, let's try that, let's try that. And you can do that if you go to the UK. But with pandemic and everything, I sort of told them what I was looking for, and they would send me an offering of 5 to 10 different rums more. And then I would either find some I liked, or I would say, none of these work, give me another 5 or 10.
Mm-hmm.
Same with, in Jamaica, they told me what was available. I told them the ones I was interested in, and then it was amazing. In Jamaica, you'd think there would be a lot of consistency between them. There was some Long Pond samples from 2007 and 8, and the 2007 was heavenly. And the 2008 had almost like a weird anise, like licorice taste to it. They were very different, but same mark, a year apart, same distillery. And I have no idea why that was, but you have to taste them because they really are all different.
Yeah, well, that makes sense, especially when you're bottling it.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to go a few steps back when you were kind of getting into this, and we met at UK Rum Fest. What was that? 2019?
Yeah, 2019.
2019, right? So as a newcomer to that world, how was this world to you? How did it welcome you? What were your first experiences in it?
The UK scene, or just the
in general, but obviously that's included.
Yeah, I mean, I've been drinking rum for 35 years at that point. And I'd been to Rum Fest in the United States, but October was literally like a few weeks after we first started selling. We had just released our first Barbados rum, and I'm like, let me try and meet some people. Let me go over there. I knew a couple of people that were going to be there, and the rest I just knew of. I'd known, we'd communicated on Facebook and the forums, and it was wonderful to put faces to, all the names, and to drink with you and the fat rum pirate, who is not fat and not a pirate, but a great guy. And Stephen James, and, just this incredible rum community that was in Europe that really never comes to the US. They call it the rum family, and it's really true. It's I don't know if you get that same sense from the bourbon community or the whiskey community. I know you don't get it in the vodka community or gin community, but it really is the rum family.
What makes it so different, do you think?
That's a great question. I think we're all fighting for respect. It's really still the underdog spirit. Vodka, whiskey has this 100 years tradition, even though rum does as well. It still has that reputation of the parties and the pirates and, frozen daiquiris and shooters that tequila had as well. Tequila got accepted probably 5-10 years ahead of rum. And I'm talking about the United States, not so for Europe. Europe is light years ahead and has been for a long time for rum, thanks to a lot of the people like the European independent bottlers and the British Navy tradition. They have more of a history of rum that didn't disappear at Prohibition. Rum was the most popular spirit in the United States until the Revolution, and then that was the British drink. So we needed to make our own spirit and started making bourbon, and nobody would drink rum anymore for a good 200 years. I'm rambling, but I think that's one of the reasons people are so happy. It's like, you like rum? I like rum. Let's be friends. You like good rum? Me too. It's people that are in on the secret still. It's not like, it hasn't yet reached the stage of bourbon drinkers who want to show off that you see a little bit of it, but I've got this $6,000 bourbon bottle in my new Camaro. Rum people are like, I scored a bottle of this. Who wants samples? And they'll immediately break open the bottle and send 30 or 50 milliliters to anybody who wants it, just because they really want to share. It's not so much a status thing with rum still.
Not yet.
I think mezcal and tequila is there as well. I think there's much more corollary in what's happening in mezcal and tequila than there is in the bourbon and whiskey world.
Good question from Tara. We kind of talked about it a bit, but how do you choose which countries? What do you do? Do you do any research, or is it just your personal palate? Or?
It's all of the above. Of course, I research. I try to drink everything I can. So Barbados, I mentioned, was the first choice just because that was the safe bet. And then our next two rums we put out were a Fiji and a Guyana. And I chose those really specifically because Guyana, to me, is one of the most important rum producing nations in the world. Just the variety of stills they have at DDL. And the Port Morant, which was the one we put out, to me is the most famous still in all of the rum world, if not all. That double wooden pot still is so iconic and has such a unique flavor that it was such a marked contrast from the Barbados to really show the variety of rum. So that one, was the given. And then the other one, I first discovered Fiji rums about 5-10 years ago from a 2001 Samaroli offering. It was an Italian independent bottling of 2001 Fiji, and it blew my mind. It was like no other rum I'd ever have. And I called the UK and I said, do you have any Fiji rums, preferably one that's mostly tropically aged? And they happened to have this, a few barrels from 2004, and I tasted it. And I'm like, wow, that's the rum I was looking for. And again, totally different from the Guyana, totally different from the Barbados. They were just rums I really loved. Obscure areas, yeah, I love again, there's the rum geeks and there's the rest of the world. Rum geeks, this is all obscure rum. I mean, to non-rum geeks. Like you watching right now, you probably all know there's a South African rum called Moba. The rest of the world doesn't know they even make rum in South Africa. So I would call that a very obscure rum. But in the rum online community, it's not obscure really at all. There are other obscure rums I would love to bring as well. But some of them are harder to sell, I think. like I tried a wonderful blend from Thailand, and I just wasn't sure how I could sell it as easily. Thailand doesn't have a rum tradition. It's
Right.
not, I mean, it's a great tasting rum, but I have to figure out how, at this point, how I can sell that. Hopefully in someday I'll be able to release that Thailand rum.
I guess it also depends on how established you are
And I'm not established yet.
as a brand, right? And that takes
Right.
a little while.
And we're less than 2 years old. We're still, I was watching your interview with Josh, and he says he has 900 barrels in his warehouse. And I'm like, got 20. We're so small. Our releases are 500, 1,000 bottles, and even the smallest Foursquares are 6,000 bottles. So we're such a little microcosm speck. We're kind of punching above our weight right now.
But you've been bringing out single casks and stuff, but you're also gonna do something else, right? Like a lower ABV.
So a couple of what we've got coming out in about 2 weeks, actually, in June, is our first single origin rum instead of a single barrel. And this is one we did in conjunction with the Rumcast guys. Will Huckinga and John Gulla did a whole episode with Karsten and Sheer about creating a unique rum blend for them. It was a great episode, and they gave their specifications and what they wanted to taste and what they wanted to see. And Karsten came up with 4 or 5 rums blends for them. And I called them up and I said, "Hey, Karsten, send me those too." And we got on a Zoom and we tasted them all together. And those guys were, blown away. They didn't think Karsten would actually create real rums for them. They were just doing a fun exercise. What if we wanted this? And we tasted them all, and we loved this Fiji rum. So we have a young rum. It's up to 2 years old. It's a blend of pot and column from Fiji. And we brought it down to 46%, which is not cask strength, and it's not a single cask, but it's a really nice blend. It's a wonderful rum, and we're going to sell it for under $49 a bottle, which is also much more affordable than anything we've done to date. So we're really excited about the single origin line. The hope is to do 1 or 2 of these a year in slightly larger editions. This is going to be about 2,300 bottles, which is all we could get. Your comment that Sheer can supply blends indefinitely, only if they still are able to source from the distilleries. And in this case, they are not able, because South Pacific Distillery now has an exclusive relationship with another. So they can't get the Fiji anymore. We can't get it anymore. So it was a one-off 1,000-liter tote that we were able to bottle. So
yeah,
there's
these exceptions, right? St. Lucia is another exception.
St. Lucia's another one.
But if you have a blend that consists mostly out of their building blocks, as I like to call them, then they can keep on doing that. They can or maybe change one for another that's kind of similar stuff. But Fiji and St. Lucia, you're out of luck.
We are trying to see what we can do in a more continuous, but not quite ready to announce that yet. We're still working through some things on that.
It's good that I didn't mention it then.
Soon come.
How about so many people are always saying we want your stuff outside of the US? I mean, I'm selfish. I'm in Canada. Obviously, I want to know about Canada, but probably it's easier for you to send stuff to Europe than to Canada, for example.
Yes and no. I mean, it's really hard because in Ontario, which is not all of Canada, but for us, it really seems like most of Canada. You have to deal with the LCBO, which is this one monolithic entity that handles all alcohol sales. So you have to have enough volume for them as well. And I'm, to bottle 4 barrels or 10 barrels, 2,000 bottles for Canada with no following and no money to market and press there is just a recipe for disaster. They won't be able to sell it, and we'll be sitting on it. And so we're not big enough yet to go into Canada. Europe as well, up until recently, the biggest challenge has been the bottle size difference. when you're only bottling 1 or 2 barrels, you don't have enough rum to bottle in 700 and 750. So up until December, it was completely not possible. They just allowed 700 bottle size in the United States now, and everybody's sort of dancing around it. Richard Seal posted yesterday, you know, what if we put it out at 700? And nobody wants to be the first one. Maggie Campbell said she was going to do it when she was a privateer. So somebody's going to have to switch to 700 for these, and that will allow us to sell to Europe much easier.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't necessarily work for bartender, for lower price things that you'd see on a bar shelf or using a cocktail menu, because their inventory and their pricing is all based on the liter purchase or the 750, and their cost calculations are all off when you're dealing with 700. The liter you can sell in both.
So do you have like a plan? Is it like I need to have this many sales in the US before I can actually make a move like that?
Yeah, it's more having money than sales. You know, we kind of bootstrapped this mostly. So we took out a home equity line of credit and borrowed a whole bunch of money and bought a bunch of rum and then bought more rum. And all the money we, made, we plowed back into buying more rum. So,
is this now your full-time?
I would say it's about 80 to 90% of my time right now.
Yeah.
I spend another 20 to 30% still on the music companies, which I have. But rum is increasingly taking up more and more time. And it's definitely a project of passion. It has yet to be a project of financial rewards, if ever. Right now, we're just trying to see how big we can grow within reason. We're never going to be Bacardi, and we don't want to be. But if we can make enough rum to pay, ourselves a little salary and sell in Europe and Canada and make people happy with good rum, I think that would be an amazing thing.
Mm-hmm. So what does it, a general day in your rum life look like, or week?
Well, right now, because it's really just the two of us in the company, my wife Maura and me, we're doing everything. It's getting on phone, finding out why the South African rum hasn't cleared customs yet, and calling the UK to find out why they haven't picked up the shipment from them, and then calling all the stores to say who needs what rum still, or you're out of taking orders. Astor Wines calls and say we need 5 cases of Guyana tomorrow, and then it's doing all the social media posts. We need a new product shot. Let's bootstrap it. Let's set up the lights. Let's take a picture of this bottle with the dog, and then getting on the phone and trying to sell a barrel to a private club, or doing a Zoom with Canada.
Mm-hmm.
It's jumping. It's very schizophrenic. We're doing logistics. We're doing we're doing marketing. We're doing advertising. We're doing sales. It's really it's the original mom and pop shop.
Are you enjoying it?
Loving it. Loving it. Loving it like I used to love being in the recording studio working with the Rolling Stones horn section.
What makes it so good? Because with music, I can understand. I'm not a musician, but I do play a little bit, and music can be such a satisfying and beautiful thing, full of emotion. But how is that with rum?
It's the same thing in that there's that Stephen Sondheim song, I made a hat where there wasn't a hat before. It's like, hey, we made a rum where there wasn't a rum before, and we didn't distill it, but we, and it makes people happy. It really, like music, people get excited about rum and they get excited about music. And bootstrapping it is really similar. Going on the road to Rochester, the first time we had launched in September, I took a ride up to Rochester. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know if we would sell anything. I loaded up my car with 6 cases of rum. I got a list of a few stores to check out. The first store I went to, Meredith met me there. It was the first time I had met Meredith. And, they bought 2 cases, and then the next store bought 2 cases, and by the end of the trip, I had sold out of what I brought. I'm like, wow. And there would be one person there or two person. And like going on the road, you play a small town and maybe there's 5 people at the bar watching you. And then you come back the next time, they tell friends, there's like 10 people at the bar. And then you go back a third time and all of a sudden the bar is full. It's kind of really like that. I went to Ohio where I got to see the gyms and people, and there was 50 people in the room waiting to hear me talk about rum. Blows my mind still. Because it's really been a quick 2 years, I think, since I've been a so-called professional at this, even though I've been drinking for 40 years. Not 40, but 35. This is the 35th anniversary of my drinking rum.
You started early.
Well, it was a trip to the Bahamas at 16, and if you could ask for it, they would serve it to you. There were a couple of years where it wasn't legal, but rum has always been my spirit.
So how does it your product, your brand, how is that different from anybody else's?
Well, I'm not the only independent bottler. I'm one of the few in the United States. So that's one of our big differentiators. There's a much bigger independent bottling scene in Europe, and there's more people doing what we're doing. And similar to, I would say Joshua at 1423 is the closest analogy, even though he's still on a much bigger scale in that he's dealing with the bulk people. He's also dealing directly with distilleries, and he's putting his own spin on things with finishes. There's still, and I'm sure there will be a lot more of them in the years to come, but there's still not a huge number of people doing this in the United States. Velier is bringing their bottles here, and some of the distilleries directly are doing their own limited editions and small releases. But we still don't have that choice that you have if you walk into Richard Blesgraaf's shop in the Netherlands and you see 80 different Foursquare bottlings from companies you've never heard of. That really doesn't exist here. You're lucky to even find Foursquare in the United States anywhere. Mm-hmm. We are still such a niche market. Like rum is a niche market in the world of spirits, and the rums we drink and like is a niche within the niche. So people that are superstars on the online rum forums are unknown to 99% of the general public. Nobody knows who Joy Spence is. Nobody knows who Richard Seal is. It's not, most of the world doesn't care. But thankfully there are passionate people that do and make this stuff available.
So in a way, you're in the US, at least, you're pretty unique, right? I
would say so. I like to think of it as more of like a Johnny Appleseed, like seeding rum around the country and spreading, spreading the joy of apples to everyone. And I fully expect there to be a lot more people getting into this. Although you don't know, because it really is a bureaucratic nightmare and a logistical nightmare. And the barriers to entry are high. Unlike music, where the barriers to entry have disappeared, it used to cost $100,000 to set up a recording studio, and you needed space and a sound room. Now everybody's on their laptop, writing movie scores. But for alcohol, you can't set up a company on your laptop. You need a lot of permits. You needed to have a dedicated commercial office space. You can't run it out of a WeWork. You can't run it out of your home.
You're saying it's too difficult now, no?
There's a lot of barriers to entry. The casual person who thinks, I like whiskey, I like bourbon, I'm going to set up a company and do it. It's a little more involved than just buying a couple of barrels and selling it. At least in the United States.
You mentioned Joshua. Is that kind of what you want to get to, that point where you have a warehouse full of barrels and become even bottles for other people, right?
I haven't thought that far. He's been doing it 10 years now, 12 years. He's so far ahead of where we are. I can't conceive of having 900 barrels in a warehouse. That strikes me as very ambitious. We may get there someday. If so, we'll have another one of these, and I'll say, 900 barrels, we did it. But,
and then he probably has 2,000.
I'm sure he will. I hope he does. I hope he does. They're a great company.
Yeah.
I really, anybody who's making honest rum, I am a supporter of. And he sweetens some rums, but he's honest about it. That's the style of rum that some of those compañeros are, and that's great. You know, my only issues, and I've said this, are companies that lie either about their age, about their ingredients, and try to sell really cheap rum as something premium and expensive by cheating. That's really what's giving the world of rum a bad name.
But he's like the compañero. That's sugared.
That's great.
And he says, you know, I do that because people want it, and it pays the bills, right? So is that something that you would be open to doing as well?
That's not something I want to do. I have no problem if other people want to do it. If I wanted to make a rum that would pay the bills and sell a lot, I would buy some really cheap bulk column still rum, as cheap as I could get it, like $2 a liter, and put some nice vanilla in and some glycerol to make it smooth and a little caramel, and it would be amazing. And your average person on the street would say, this is the smoothest rum I've ever had. And it's not, you know, that's like the McDonald's of rum versus a nice Kobe steak. It's not real. But there's such an artistry of distilling and hundreds of years of history and science, how to make an amazing spirit, that to take a shortcut for profit is probably a smarter way to make money, but that's not why we got into it.
At the same time, you know, for them, the compañero is what pays for the other releases. He said the other releases are bringing as good as no money or no money. And the other releases is all you do at the moment.
Well, then we may never get up to 900 barrels, I guess. And I'm okay with that. I never say never, but at this point, I have no plan to put out a sweetened rum.
Okay. Yeah, because you could put it under a different name, different label, you know.
That's really not why I drink rum. It's not what I like in a rum. 10 years ago, before anybody knew, we all thought, oh, Zaccapa's the greatest. It's the smoothest. Nobody knew it was sugared. Nobody had hydrometers out back then. This was, I think I first went to Guatemala in 2005, and it was great. Zaya was from Guatemala back then, and they had the 15-year and the 23-year, and we all accepted it for face value. It was great rum, and it was smooth, and it was all that wonderful stuff.
It was great in illusion.
In all of, you know, spirits, there's some illusion and sexiness. But again, that's not really what we're trying to do. We want to we want to showcase the best artistry of the distillers. I'm not a distiller. I am never going to have the knowledge of a Richard or a Maggie or a Joy. I just prefer to be more of a curator and bring some of these amazing expressions to people.
Well, that sounds good to me. And that's what you're doing. I mean, I've tasted quite a few of your releases, and yeah, except for the one. I enjoyed all of them. And that Belize, I don't know if it was because you actually went there and you went the extra mile, but that one is stunning.
Yeah. Stunning. I'm hoping to get back there again in about 2 weeks for the next batch.
Oh yeah, they're open for visitors.
They are for vaccinated visitors.
Very nice.
So thankfully, fully vaccinated and ready to travel. Hopefully, we can get over to Europe for October.
Yes, well, I'm counting on it. By that time, I'm counting on it. Stupid quarantine in Canada has got to be over by then. Seriously, that's ridiculous.
Have they said they're going to open the borders yet?
No.
Okay.
No. I think no, but they're just very hard line here. Still, everything's closed, stores closed, everything closed. So, But we're in May. October is just over 4 months away. I think it will be okay. Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. So how do you see the future of rum in general?
I'd like to think it's continuing to grow and expand. I think we're 5 years behind mezcal. Mezcal is 5 years behind tequila. There's going to be more American distilleries that will have aged rums. Right now, there's not a whole lot of aged rum from American distilleries. I think we're going to start to see more of that as they mature. I think we're going to see a lot more independent bottlers. And I think I'd like to think there's going to be more gravitation towards the rums without additives, natural spirits like the 100% agave tequilas and mezcals, more of that trend towards natural, no additive spirits. I'd like to think that's going to happen.
I think we need the big boys and girls on board for that, eh?
Yeah, you've got a behemoth in the industry which towers over everything else in the world, which is Bacardi, and accounts for 70% of the rum sales in the United States with just one monolithic company. And nobody's ever going to beat them, and they're going to occupy their thing. But that's okay. It's almost a class unto itself, Bacardi as a spirit. And then you've got this class of aged rums and even unaged rums, but really tasty rums. And hopefully that class will grow akin to tequila and mezcal. Not to knock on Bacardi at all, because they're never going away and they will always do well, and they should. They make rum that serves its purpose very well.
Yeah. What they do very well.
Yeah.
And there's clearly demand for it, and you're never going to beat them. But at the same time, you as your audience is educated rum drinkers who are looking for cask strength spirits. That has to grow, right? Otherwise, you're never going to make money.
Yeah. I still haven't got to the making money part of it, but it's there's a lot of crossover increasingly from the bourbon community, either getting priced out of bourbons or just getting sick of bourbons. There's been a lot of interest saying, hey, this is another brown spirit, and some of these, wow, are just as good as bourbons. They're equal to. So we're getting a lot of fans coming over from that world.
Mm-hmm.
Less so much from the Scotch drinkers, but much more the bourbon drinkers tend to be a little younger, a little more open to crossing over. Tequila drinkers like to stay in their lane. They like tequila, and some of them branch out to mezcal. Most of them, not you, Tracy.
I love your rum.
Yeah. The exception, but yeah, a lot of the growth in new people that aren't rum geeks come from the bourbon world.
But what needs to happen, or what do you need to do to get into the money?
I think volume, really. You need to be selling a lot more rum. Our total gross is probably like the cost of the Bacardi Christmas party. Unless and in order to do that, it's very different from, say, an internet startup company where you come up with a cool piece of software and suddenly you can license it to 1 million people and you're making $5 million a month. In order to sell $5 million worth of rum, you need to, spend $2 million on rum, $3 million on rum, and then marketing money. So if we raised a whole bunch of money and, spent $5 million on rum, then maybe we could make $6 or $7 million on it. And when you deduct all the staff and salaries to move that much rum, maybe there'll be a little left over. It's really not the best way to make a small fortune in the alcohol business is to start with a large fortune.
Yeah.
It's, we definitely didn't go in it to get rich. I thought if we could break even, make a little bit, bring great rum to people for 10 years. I'm quite happy.
Well, you're getting a lot of love from a lot of people. That's something.
I think because at least I'd like to think we're not full of, I don't know if YouTube will censor it if I say we're not full of crap. We really, not gonna lie, we just love rum. That's really what it's about. I'm just as big of a rum geek as everybody else that drinks it.
Yeah, I think that's funny because obviously I met you in London, and that's the impression you get, from you, is that you're just passionate and you want to get to know people, and you want to get to know the distilleries and the actual people who know, like the Richards and the all the distillers and brand owners or whatever. The first impression you get from you is really good. I think that is really helping a lot.
And I'm still learning every day. I did not come into this having 20 years of spirits experience or being a bartender for 10 years or working for, I just love rum. And any chance I get to learn from you've taught me things, everybody, I'm constantly learning still.
And we all are. Isn't that one of the great things about rum, is that you can never stop learning? It's incredible.
It really, and I haven't even gotten into the science and chemistry of distilling. I mean, I know the basics of distilling and how rum is made, obviously. But when you get to hear Maggie Campbell, about the intricacies of, putting it in this corner or that corner and this yeast at 64 degrees versus that strain at 68 degrees. I mean, it's like nuclear physics, the way they think about rum making. That's a whole other thing. I feel like I've already done 2 years of graduate school in spirits in the last 2 years. It's been amazing and invigorating.
Yeah, no, it is. It never stops. It seems it never stops.
Right.
There's always something new to learn.
Just like the guitar.
Yeah. Well, let's not talk about that. I went through my whole list of questions plus a whole bunch of others. Oh no, Holmes Cay or Holmes Cay? So what's that about?
What's that about? So, coming up with the name, we really took our cues from the worlds of whiskey, and we wanted to evoke sort of a British tradition, because the rums we were originally putting out were all from the former British territories, and we liked Barbados, Jamaica, Guyana. So we wanted something that evoked British and the Caribbean, and me. And my full name is Eric Holmes Cay. So you just kind of change the spelling of K to C-A-Y, and bam, you've got Key, which is tropical island, and you've got the Holmes, which I was named after Sherlock Holmes. My dad was a huge fan. So yeah, we've got the British, we've got the islands, and we've got me all in one package. So the proper way to pronounce the brand is Holmes Cay, knowing that people in America at least will mispronounce it as Holmes Cay, which is also fine because that's basically me.
Okay, so all bases covered. Nobody
all bases covered. Right.
Okay. All right. Does anybody who's here have any questions? Richard, I think he's dying to ask something. You got to unmute yourself, though.
Yeah. All the way down under. It's about 8 or 9 in the morning.
Yeah. Hey, guys. Hey, thanks for letting me join in this session. It's so good. So thanks, Ivan, for setting it up. Eric, good to see you.
Likewise.
You may not remember, but we touched base earlier this year. Couple of questions. One is, and I'm just going to keep asking you this, any further development on Australia, New Zealand distribution?
Not yet, but hopefully if these single origin blends, if we can get them happening, we should have enough volume. If we get one that doesn't run out with 1,000 liters, we can hopefully do one that will have enough volume. Also, the taxes in Australia are ridiculous. Speaking with a couple of distributors, and they said, to sell something for $150 Australian, you need to sell it to us for like $25 a bottle. And right now my costs are more than that. So
yeah, well, I think, Eric, there's no Australians online, so I think you're better just doing it with New Zealand anyway.
yeah, that's fine.
And we're about 30% in terms of the duties and the taxes. It's a good 30% less anyway for this country.
It's really expensive, especially for an independent company that's not distilling ourselves, because there's at least one extra price tier, if not two, between the manufacturer and the customer. You know, somebody who can actually distill and sell it right to the distributor has a price advantage. It's really I haven't figured out how to make the numbers yet work with our current products. It's just too expensive, and I don't want to sell rum for $300 a bottle. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. If I may, just a couple of quick broad ones. St. Lucia.
Mm-hmm. I love
Talking
it.
about that?
No, I would love to, but there's one distillery in St. Lucia, and they do not sell to anybody. They did, and then they stopped, which totally respect. But nobody can get St. Lucia rum.
Interesting. You mentioned something about Mauritius as well in the beginning there. Are you able to divulge which distillery there?
Yes.
Or?
Yes, we have 4 barrels sitting in New York now from Gray's Distillery. We have 2 barrels.
Right.
2,000 that we're going to put out at cask strength. So really excited about that. Gray's is, some of you probably know, it's the distillery used for Equiano rum. It's part Gray's and part Foursquare. So ours is pretty much the Gray's, the Mauritius part of the Equiano, but aged a lot longer and at full, 50 to 55%. So you'll see that by the end of the year as well.
Nice. And in Canada too, right?
And yes, Canada Post. That's how it's going to get up to Canada.
Canada Post, yeah, love it.
Or making them run over to Rochester.
All right.
Yes.
Anybody else with anything? Please. This is your chance. Don't be shy. Unmute.
So yes, the rum's coming out for the rest of this year for sure. We have the Fiji blend coming out in June, and then we'll have the Mhoba and the Gray's Mauritius rum, and some more 10-year, it'll be 9-year Barbados port cask. And then we'll probably have some more Jamaica rum coming in early 2022. Some more Long Pond and some more Clarendon rums. And these will be 100% tropically aged and bottled in Jamaica.
Wow.
So excited for those.
That's awesome. That is very awesome.
I have one quick question.
Yeah.
So do you, for tasting wise, do you bottle your rums to your taste? I ask because every single rum I've had from you, like 95%, I think are perfect. And I don't feel that way or a bottler where I'll have one that I love and there's one that, is just really not for me. It's still good. And is it you who makes the decision, or do you have like a panel of tasters? Like how do you decide?
I make the final decision. Some things I'll have a little panel. In fact, the tasting panel is sitting on the Zoom right now for the South African rums. I had the wonderful palates of Seth, Tracy, and Meredith on board. And
it's very formal. We do it on Zoom.
We did a Zoom tasting. I was sent 4 samples, 4 different styles of South African rums, and I knew what I liked. But when you're about to spend a significant amount of money, you kind of just want a second opinion from people who are more or less the demographic. And really, thankfully, they all agreed. That of the 4 samples, the one that we ended up going with, the 4-year South African whiskey cask, was just an incredible rum. There was another one that was aged in French whiskey casks, which was like a high ester rum on steroids. It almost melted my nose off and I'm like, it scared me. It really terrified me. It was a very intense rum. And even the Moba we chose is not a rum for beginners. It really isn't. It's an advanced high ester rum. When I go to rum tastings to bourbon clubs, they're scared of the Jamaica Wedderburn because they're not used to even that low level of esters in their spirits. Like, whoa, I love the Belize, I love the Barbados, but this Jamaica's, whoa, doesn't taste like a bourbon. I'm like, yeah, it tastes like a Jamaican rum. So the South African rum is like that, like Ivar would put it best, mixed with the agricole, herbalness of a Martinique rum, combined with the esters of a Jamaican. It's really, I'm really excited for that one. I don't expect to get high reviews and ratings on it, just because it's really a unique taste. I don't care. I think it's really cool and deserves to be brought out.
You will get high ratings from your customer, your typical customer, for sure.
Right.
It's not for new people, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very different. I'm just warning you. You may not like it, Kim, but hopefully you'll be able to appreciate that it really is a different and unique spirit. But it's interesting how different editions attract different people. Like the Port Morant Scotch whiskey people really seem to love because it has that smoky, peaty quality to it. Whereas the bourbon drinkers really like the 15-year-old Belize and the real dry oak that 15 years in the tropical heat brought to that. Jamaica, they run from, as Meredith says, the poor bourbon babies.
You got to start with Appleton.
Yeah.
I put a small amount of that Port Morant into an infinity bottle,
mm-hmm.
and I can't do that Port Morant. It's too much for me.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, I think that made the infinity bottle, and that bottle is now one of my favorite rums that I have.
Well, that little bit of Port Morant makes, Pusser's great. It makes El Dorado great. It makes a lot of other Navy, rums, lambs. A lot of them use a little bit of that Port Morant just to give it that flavor and fullness. It brings that flavor to a lot of there. I think they use it. Is it the 12 or the 15 that uses more of the Port Morant in the blend of the El Dorado? Anybody know? No. One of them uses more than the other. And definitely you can taste it in Pusser's rum. It's such a great still. It's awesome. Freshly sharpened pencils. So, yeah. Anything else?
That's the question. I'm out. I'm done.
All right.
I have no more questions.
I didn't get to make it 2 hours like Karsten did, but.
Was that 2 hours?
I think it was.
No, that was Richard. Richard was,
it was Richard. 2 hours. That's right. Yeah.
Once he starts talking about rum, it's fantastic. No, but Joshua was also about just over an hour, so it's good.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. I really
thank you.
Like
I said, the only thing I like more than talking about rum for an hour is drinking rum for an hour.
Well, we'll do that next time.
I love it in person. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for doing this.
My pleasure. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.